Hello and welcome to TaleTalk English. Today's story is heartwarming, emotional, and full of kindness, difficult choices, and unexpected love. It will also help you improve your English listening and vocabulary through simple conversations and real-life emotions. As you listen, try to imagine every scene, every expression, and every feeling. This is the story of a young woman who married an older man for security, but unexpectedly found true love. My name is Teresa Miller, and I am 26 years old. I live in a busy city where thousands of people walk past each other every day without stopping. The streets are always full of noise, buses, and hurried footsteps. Even though I was surrounded by people, I often felt completely alone. I worked as a cashier in a large supermarket near the center of the city. Every morning, I woke up before sunrise, put on my green uniform, and caught the same crowded bus. My job was simple. I scanned groceries, accepted payments, smiled at customers, and wished them a pleasant day. Then I repeated the same routine hundreds of times until my shift finally ended. Standing for so many hours made my legs ache. By the evening, my shoulders felt heavy and my hands were sore from lifting bags and counting money. Still, I never complained. I needed the job more than I needed comfort. When I returned to my small apartment each night, silence greeted me. The room was clean but empty. There was a narrow bed beside the window, a tiny table, and a small kitchen where I cooked simple meals. Sometimes I sat by the window with a cup of tea and watched the lights of the city. Everyone seemed to be going somewhere. Everyone appeared to belong to someone. I belonged to no one. My parents had passed away several years earlier. They had never been wealthy, but they had filled our little home with kindness. My father repaired old furniture, and my mother worked in a bakery. They often returned home tired, yet they always smiled when they saw me. They taught me lessons that stayed with me long after they were gone. Always tell the truth, my father used to say. And never judge people by what they own, my mother would add. After they died, life became much harder than I had ever imagined. Bills continued to arrive, rent had to be paid every month, food was never free. I quickly learned that the world could be cold to someone with no family to depend on. There were evenings when I counted every coin in my purse before entering the grocery store. Sometimes I bought only bread, eggs, and soup because that was all I could afford. Still, I refused to give up. I believed that if I worked honestly and treated people with respect, life might become kinder one day. I did not dream about becoming rich. I did not dream about expensive vacations or beautiful houses. I only wished for peace. I wanted one place where I could sleep without worrying about tomorrow. Love was not part of my plans. At that time, surviving was already difficult enough. One rainy Monday changed everything. Dark clouds covered the sky from early morning. Cold rain fell without stopping, and many customers hurried inside the supermarket to escape the weather. Near the end of my afternoon shift, the automatic doors opened again. An older man stepped inside. His gray coat was covered with small drops of rain. He carried a black umbrella and walked slowly but confidently. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his face showed the quiet lines of many years. He did not look around nervously like most customers. Instead, he calmly picked up a basket and walked through the store. A few minutes later, he joined my checkout line. He waited patiently while I finished helping another customer. Many people became impatient if they had to wait. He simply stood there with gentle eyes and folded hands. When it was finally his turn, he placed a loaf of bread, tea, cheese, apples, and fresh flowers on the counter. The flowers caught my attention. Most people buying groceries did not also buy flowers on rainy days. I scanned each item carefully. "I'm sorry for the wheat," I said politely. "There is nothing to apologize for," he answered with a warm smile. "Everyone becomes tired after a long day." His voice was calm, almost comforting. I looked up for the first time. He was watching me kindly, not with pity, but with understanding. "You look exhausted," he said softly. I gave a small smile. "It has been a busy day." "I'm sure it has," he replied. He paid for his groceries, thanked me, and quietly left. I watched him disappear into the rain. His visit lasted only a few minutes, yet something about him stayed in my thoughts. Perhaps it was because no customer had ever noticed how tired I looked. The following afternoon, I saw him again. He bought nearly the same groceries: bread, tea, fresh fruit, and another small bouquet of flowers. When he reached my counter, he greeted me with a friendly smile. "I hope today has been easier." "A little," I replied. "I'm glad," he said. That was all. No personal questions, no uncomfortable conversation, just simple kindness. After finishing my shift, I stepped outside into the cool evening air. Across the street stood a small cafe where office workers often stopped for coffee before going home. As I waited to cross the road, I noticed the older man walking toward the cafe. I thought nothing of it. A few moments later, I continued toward the bus stop. "Miss," I heard it behind me. I turned around. He was standing a few steps behind me, holding a paper cup. I thought this might help. I looked at the cup. Warm steam rose into the cold evening air. "It is only tea," he said gently. "The weather is unpleasant today." For a moment, I did not know what to say. No stranger had ever shown me such simple kindness. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded politely. "Take care of yourself." Then he walked away without waiting for another word. The cup warmed my hands all the way home. That night, I drank the last few drops before going to bed. For reasons I could not explain, the tea tasted different. It tasted like hope. During the following weeks, I began seeing him more often. Sometimes he shopped during my afternoon shift, sometimes just before closing time. Occasionally, he brought me a warm drink after work. Other days, it was a fresh pastry wrapped carefully in a paper napkin. He never expected anything in return. He never stayed long enough to make me uncomfortable. His kindness felt natural. Little by little, I stopped feeling nervous whenever I saw him. Instead, I found myself looking toward the entrance near the end of my shift. If he appeared, my day somehow felt lighter. One evening, after another rainy day, Jerry spoke more than usual. "My name is Jerry Jones," he said. "I'm Teresa," I said. "It is a pleasure to finally know your name," he added. "The pleasure is mine," I replied. For several seconds, we simply stood beneath the roof outside the supermarket while rain tapped softly against the pavement. "You work very hard," Jerry said. "I try," I replied. "And you live alone?" he asked. His words surprised me. I looked down. "Yes, I thought so," he said. He was silent for a moment before continuing. "Life has not been kind to you." I felt my throat tighten. "No," I admitted quietly. "It hasn't." He nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." We stood together without speaking. The silence did not feel uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. Finally, Jerry looked at me with gentle eyes. "I hope life becomes easier for you." "So do I," I said. That night, I thought about him for hours. Why would someone I barely knew care about my happiness? Most people never noticed me at all. Jerry always did. Days became weeks. Winter slowly settled over the city. The air grew colder and darkness arrived earlier every evening. One afternoon, Jerry waited outside after my shift as usual, but this time he looked more serious. We walked slowly toward the nearby park. The trees had lost their leaves and the paths were almost empty. After several minutes, he finally spoke. "Teresa." "Yes?" "You have spent your life taking care of yourself," he said. "I've had no other choice," I replied. "I know." He stopped walking. "I would like to help you." His words surprised me. I looked at him carefully. "Why?" "Because no one should carry every burden alone," he said. "I've managed this long," I replied. "You've survived," he answered gently. "But surviving and living are not the same." His words settled deep inside my heart. No one had ever spoken to me that way. Before I could answer, Jerry reached into his coat pocket. He removed a carefully sealed white envelope. I wrote something. He placed it gently into my hands. "Please read it when you are alone." "What is it?" I asked. "My thoughts." He smiled softly. "There is no need to answer tonight." With that, he wished me good evening and walked away, leaving me standing beneath the gray winter sky. I held the envelope tightly all the way home. My heart beat faster than usual. Inside that simple white envelope, I felt that my quiet life was about to change forever. That evening, I sat alone beside the small lamp in my apartment. The rain tapped gently against the window. The room was quiet except for the sound of the old clock hanging on the wall. The white envelope rested on the table in front of me. For several minutes, I simply looked at it. My hands felt cold. Finally, I opened it. Inside was a neatly folded letter written in careful handwriting. Jerry began by thanking me for accepting his small acts of kindness over the past few months. He wrote that watching me work every day had reminded him of someone from his younger years. He admired my patience, my honesty, and the quiet strength I carried without asking anyone for help. Then his words became more personal. He wrote that he knew life had been unfair to me. He understood what loneliness felt like because he had lived with it for many years. He wanted to help me, not for a few days, not for a few weeks. He wanted to give me a better life. He wrote that he would pay my rent if I accepted. He would make sure I never worried about food or bills again. He expected nothing in return. Then I reached the last page. My eyes stopped on one sentence. "Would you consider becoming my wife?" I read the line again and again. Marriage. The word echoed inside my mind. I had never imagined receiving a proposal like this, not from a man much older than me, not from someone I had known for only a short time. I placed the letter on the table and covered my face with my hands. My thoughts refused to slow down. Was he serious? Why would someone like Jerry choose me? I barely slept that night. The next morning, I went to work as usual, but my mind remained somewhere else. Every customer became a blur. Every hour seemed longer than the one before. Near the end of my shift, I saw him standing quietly near the entrance, just as always. He did not approach me. He simply waited. After work, I walked toward him. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. "I read your letter," I finally said. "I know," he said. "I've been thinking about it all night." He nodded patiently. "I don't expect an easy answer." I looked at the people passing us on the sidewalk. Everyone seemed busy with their own lives. No one noticed ours. "I don't know if I understand why you chose me." Jerry smiled gently. "I chose you because you are kind." "You hardly know me," I replied. "I know enough." His voice remained calm. "I've spent months watching how you treat people. Even when customers were rude, you answered politely. Even when you were exhausted, you kept smiling. I lowered my eyes. No one has ever noticed those things. I did, he said. Silence surrounded us again. Then I took a slow breath. I'll marry you. The words came out more quietly than I expected. Jerry simply nodded. He did not celebrate. He did not cry. Instead, he smiled with quiet gratitude. Thank you, Teresa. That simple moment changed the direction of my entire life. Our wedding was small. There were no expensive decorations, no orchestra, no large group of guests, only a judge, 2 witnesses, Jerry, and me. I wore a simple cream-colored dress that Jerry had quietly bought for me. He wore a dark gray suit that fit him perfectly. When the ceremony ended, he gently held my hand. "Welcome home," he said. Those 2 words stayed with me. Home. I had almost forgotten what that word meant. Jerry's house stood in a peaceful neighborhood just outside the city. Tall trees surrounded the property. A narrow stone path led to the front door. The house itself looked old but strong. Its walls were covered with climbing roses, and the garden was carefully maintained. As we entered, I noticed the warm smell of polished wood and old books. Everything inside was clean and organized. Large windows filled the rooms with soft afternoon light. Shelves full of books covered one wall of the living room. Fresh flowers stood in small glass vases throughout the house. Nothing felt expensive. Everything felt loved. Jerry smiled as he watched me look around. This house has been very quiet for many years. He handed me a small key. It belongs to you now. For a moment, I could not answer. No one had ever given me a key to anything before. The first few days felt strange. Jerry had prepared a bedroom just for me. He never asked me to share his room. He never pressured me. He simply respected my space. Every morning I woke to the smell of fresh tea. Jerry was always already awake. Sometimes he read newspapers in the garden. Sometimes he watered the flowers before breakfast. His movements were slow but steady. We ate together every morning. Most of our conversations were short. The tea is good today. The roses are blooming early. The weather looks colder. Simple words, simple moments, yet they slowly became the happiest parts of my day. I wanted to contribute to our new life together. I cleaned the house, cooked dinner, washed clothes, organized the bookshelves. Whenever I thanked Jerry for everything he had done, he answered the same way. We are taking care of each other. Those words slowly changed how I saw myself. For years, I had believed I was only surviving. Now I felt useful again, needed. One afternoon, Jerry invited me into the garden. Rows of colorful flowers stretched across the yard. Birds sang from the nearby trees. The air smelled fresh after the morning rain. "My wife loved this garden," Jerry said quietly. I looked toward him. "You've never spoken much about her." He remained silent for a while. Then he smiled sadly. "Her name was Margaret." He gently touched one of the roses. "She loved flowers even more than I do." I listened without interrupting. "We planted most of these together." His voice remained calm, but I could hear the sadness beneath it. "I still care for them because they remind me of her." For the first time, I understood that Jerry carried his own loneliness. It simply looked different from mine. Weeks passed peacefully. I no longer worked at the supermarket. Jerry insisted that I should rest and think about my future. At first, I felt guilty. I have worked almost every day since finishing school. Without work, I sometimes wondered if I deserved this comfortable life. Jerry seemed to understand. One afternoon, he placed several books on the dining table. "They're for you." I looked at the titles: history, art, travel, poetry. "I don't know much about these." "You don't have to," he smiled. "Read what interests you." So I did. Little by little, I rediscovered something I had forgotten: curiosity. Learning became enjoyable again. Sometimes I spent hours reading by the window while sunlight filled the room. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about unpaid bills. I was thinking about ideas. Still, the outside world had not changed. One Saturday, I visited the local market alone. As I walked between the fruit stands, I noticed two women whispering. They glanced toward me. One of them spoke just loudly enough for me to hear. "That's the young woman who married the old man. I heard he's very wealthy. She must have known exactly what she was doing." They laughed quietly. My face grew warm. I lowered my head and continued walking. The words followed me all the way home. That evening, Jerry noticed my silence. Something happened. I tried to smile. "It's nothing." He looked at me kindly. "You don't have to protect me from the truth." I finally told him about the whispers, about the laughter, about what people believed. Jerry listened without interrupting. When I finished, he simply nodded. "People often create stories when they don't know the truth." "It hurts," I said. "I know." He looked toward the fireplace. "It happened before." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He stood slowly and walked toward the bookshelf. After a moment, he returned carrying an old photograph. A young woman smiled beside him. She looked happy, beautiful. "You were both very young." Jerry nodded. "Margaret was only 25 when we married." I stared at the photograph. "You helped her too?" "Yes," he said. His answer surprised me. "She had nothing when we met." My chest tightened. The question escaped before I could stop it. "Did she marry you because of your money?" Jerry looked directly into my eyes. "For a while, yes." His calm answer shocked me. "And later?" I asked. "Later, she loved me," he replied. The room became silent. I looked down at my hands. The truth I had hidden since our wedding suddenly felt too heavy. The words came out before I could stop them. "I married you for security." Jerry did not look surprised. "I know." "I wasn't in love," I said. "I know that too," he replied. Tears filled my eyes. "I'm sorry." He walked closer and gently placed one hand over mine. "You don't owe me an apology for being honest." His kindness hurt more than anger ever could. That night, I lay awake for hours. I realized something important. Jerry had known my reasons from the very beginning, yet he had never judged me. He had simply given me time to understand my own heart. That night, sleep never truly came. I lay awake in my room, watching the ceiling while the wind moved softly through the trees outside. Jerry's words repeated themselves again and again inside my mind. I know. He knew why I married him. He had known from the beginning that I was searching for safety instead of love. Yet he had never blamed me. He had never spoken with anger. He had simply accepted the truth and continued treating me with kindness every single day. I had expected disappointment. Instead, I had received understanding. For the first time since our wedding, I realized how deeply lonely Jerry must have been. Not lonely because he lived alone, lonely because he had spent years carrying memories that no one else could fully understand. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen. Everything looked exactly the same. The kettle was already boiling. Fresh bread rested on a wooden board. Jerry carefully poured tea into 2 cups. His movements were slower than usual, but his face remained peaceful.
I stood quietly for a moment before walking toward him. "I'm still here," I said softly. He looked up. "I know." "I'm frightened," I said. He smiled gently. "So am I." Those 3 words surprised me. Until then, I had imagined Jerry as someone who was never afraid. But now I understand. Even kind people carried fears they rarely shared. He reached across the table and lightly held my hand. "We don't need all the answers today." I nodded. Somehow those simple words made my heart feel lighter. The weeks passed quietly. Winter slowly disappeared and spring arrived. The trees outside our windows became green again. Flowers returned to the garden. Every morning, Jerry spent time among the roses. Every afternoon, I joined him. Sometimes we worked together without saying a single word. Silence no longer felt empty. It felt comfortable. One afternoon, while we were planting new flowers, I noticed Jerry stop to catch his breath. He rested one hand against the wooden fence. "Are you all right?" I asked. "I'm only a little tired," he replied. But I could see that something was different. His face looked paler. His steps had become slower. At dinner, he barely touched his food. I tried not to worry. Still, I could not ignore what I had seen. A few days later, he asked if I would accompany him to a medical appointment. We traveled together into the city. The doctor greeted Jerry warmly, as though they had known each other for years. I waited outside the office. Nearly 40 minutes passed before the door finally opened. Jerry smiled when he saw me. The smile was gentle, but his eyes looked heavier than before. Neither of us spoke during the drive home. That evening, after dinner, he asked me to sit beside him in the living room. The fire burned quietly inside the fireplace. Outside, the evening sky slowly turned dark. Jerry folded his hands together before speaking. "There is something I should have told you before." I felt my heartbeat quicken. "The doctor first examined me before we married." I listened carefully. "He told me that my heart was becoming weaker." Jerry paused for a long moment. "I knew my time would probably be shorter than I had hoped." The room became completely silent. I stared at him, unable to speak. "I wanted to tell you," he continued, "but I was afraid you would refuse my proposal." My eyes filled with tears. "You were sick all this time?" He nodded. "I simply chose to spend the time I had left in the best way I knew." I could barely breathe. "Why me?" His answer came immediately. "Because you deserved peace." He looked toward the garden outside the window. "When I first met you, I saw someone who carried the same loneliness I had carried after losing Margaret." He smiled sadly. "My greatest fear was never dying." He looked back at me. "It was leaving this world knowing that someone kind would continue suffering alone." A tear rolled slowly down my cheek. "I wanted to protect you." His voice remained calm. "I wanted to give you a home." Another long silence filled the room. Then Jerry spoke once more. "Margaret didn't leave me." I looked up. "I've always believed she left because life became easier." He slowly shook his head. "No." His eyes became distant. "She became ill." His voice almost disappeared. "I stayed beside her until her final breath." He closed his eyes for a moment. "I have missed her every day since." I suddenly understood why he cared so deeply for the garden, why he bought flowers, why he appreciated quiet moments. Everything reminded him of love that had once filled his life. When he opened his eyes again, they rested gently on me. "I did not marry you because I wanted someone to care for me." He smiled softly. "I married you because I wanted someone to care for after I was gone." The weight of those words settled deep inside my heart. For months, I had believed I was the one being saved. Now I understand. Jerry had never expected anything from me. He had only hoped to leave behind someone who would never again face the world completely alone. Without thinking, I moved closer. I wrapped my arms around him. For the first time since our wedding, I embraced him without hesitation. "I'm not leaving," I whispered. "Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." Jerry closed his eyes. A peaceful smile appeared on his face. "Thank you, Teresa." After that evening, everything between us changed. There were no more hidden thoughts, no more unanswered questions, no more fear of speaking honestly. I stopped thinking about our age difference. When I looked at Jerry, I no longer saw an old man. I saw my husband. I saw the person who had quietly rebuilt my life, one kind act at a time. We spent every possible moment together. Some afternoons we walked slowly through the garden. Some evenings we listened to old music on the radio. Sometimes we simply watched the sunset without saying anything. Those ordinary moments became my happiest memories. At night, we grew closer. His touch remained gentle. His embrace felt warm. I no longer stayed beside him because I needed protection. I stayed because I loved him. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what marriage meant. It was not excitement. It was not expensive gifts. It was choosing the same person every day, even when life became difficult. Months passed peacefully. Then, one morning, I woke up feeling unusually tired. Food smelled different. Even the taste of tea had changed. At first, I ignored it, but the strange feeling continued. Finally, I visited our family doctor. After several examinations, she smiled kindly. "Congratulations, Teresa."
I looked at her, confused. "You're going to have a baby?" For several seconds, I could not move. My hands trembled. A baby! Our baby! I hurried home. Jerry was sitting in the garden beneath the old apple tree. When he saw my face, he immediately stood. "What happened?" I gently placed his hand against mine. "We're going to be parents." For a moment, he simply stared at me. Then tears slowly filled his eyes. "A child." He smiled through those tears. "Our child." He held both of my hands for a long time without speaking. That afternoon, the garden somehow looked brighter than ever before. Jerry's strength slowly faded during the following months. Walking became more difficult. Reading tired his eyes. Sometimes he needed to rest after only a few minutes in the garden. I stayed beside him every day. I read books aloud. We listened to music together. Sometimes I simply held his hand while he slept peacefully. Neither of us wasted time pretending everything would last forever. Instead, we appreciated every ordinary day we were given. One quiet autumn morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was completely still. I walked toward Jerry's room. He looked peaceful. His face carried the same gentle expression I had seen the day we first met. I softly touched his hand. It was still. Jerry had quietly left this world in his sleep. Tears filled my eyes, but beneath my sadness there was gratitude. He had not been alone. Neither of us had. Several weeks later, while organizing his study, I found another sealed envelope. My name was written carefully across the front. Inside was one final letter. "My dearest Teresa, if you are reading this, it means my journey has ended. Please do not spend your life looking backward. Smile when you remember me. Raise our child with kindness. Fill this house with laughter again. My greatest wish was never to be remembered as a wealthy man. I only wish to be remembered as someone who loved you well. If that happened, then my life was complete. Thank you for choosing to stay. With all my love, Jerry." I cried for a long time, not because he had left, but because I finally understood every choice he had made. Years passed. Our son grew into a cheerful little boy with Jerry's gentle smile. The house never felt empty. His laughter filled every room. One day, while cleaning the study, I found Jerry's old sketchbook. Most of the pages were blank. On the last page, he had drawn a simple rose. I bought a small box of pencils. At first, my drawings were clumsy, but every week I improved a little more. I drew Jerry's favorite chair, the old apple tree, the kitchen where we shared breakfast every morning. His hands held a cup of tea. The garden is filled with roses. Each drawing became another memory preserved on paper. As I drew, I realized something important. Love does not disappear when someone leaves. It changes. It becomes part of the life we continue to live. Outside our peaceful home, people still whispered, "She married an old man for money." Whenever I heard those words, I simply smiled. They knew the beginning of our story. They never knew the ending. I had once married because I wanted to survive. Jerry had married because he wanted me to live. Some love arrives with loud promises. Ours arrived quietly. One warm cup of tea, one kind smile, one gentle hand reaching toward another lonely heart. And in the end, I discovered that the strongest love is often the one that grows slowly through patience, trust, and simple acts of kindness. That was the greatest gift Jerry left behind. Not his house, not his savings, but the courage to love without fear. And for one lifetime, that was more than enough.